We're going to do a tour of Old Forester's downtown location here.
More than 50% of the flavor of bourbon comes out of the barrel. This is what they call an urban warehouse. You will not see this anywhere else along the Bourbon Trail. Kind of yeasty, smells like bread, smells like beer. I want you to embrace the Kentucky cousin you did not know you had. And cheers, my friends.
I'm now in downtown Louisville, and we're going to do a tour of Old Forester's downtown location here. We're running a little bit late, so I'm gonna hurry up and get on in there.
Hey, thanks for what you do, man.
I appreciate it. Hey, TJ, what was your name?
Daryl.
Daryl, nice to meet you.
Well, we need to talk to him then. What's your recommendation on here?
What do you mean?
It's our last day. So
Last day?
What's the must?
In Louisville? I mean, Angel's Envy's pretty good. The big ones, if you want to get out a little ways, like Buffalo Trace is really nice if you haven't done that one. Maker's Mark, and you can dip the, your own thing. So, but there's not a bad tour around here. So, yeah.
By 1917, George passes away, and he leaves the family business to his son, Owsley. Now, Owsley's smart, he's progressive, he is a visionary. He sees the handwriting on the wall. He knows what's getting ready to happen. So he goes out and acquires one of 6 medicinal licenses. Because by 1919, the Volstead Act is in full play. And by 1920, Prohibition hits. Whiskey Row dies. 89 of those distilleries, including Old Forester, we move out of downtown Louisville. There are thousands of jobs lost here in this city. But because Owsley was smart, he went out and got the medicinal license. Old Forester, we could stay afloat during Prohibition by selling our bourbon for medicinal purposes only. We could not make any product during Prohibition, but we could sell what we had on hand for medicinal. Let's do a quick recap on what they would go on and call a roaring 20s, shall we? Crime begins to rise. The mafia gets in full swing. Moonshiners are running everywhere. It is the beginning of the Great Depression. And the number one thing that we can tax, we've not been making it for a very long time. You need to understand that income tax here in the United States did not come into play until 1913. That meant up until that time, 70% of the United States taxes was on alcohol. We are now in the Great Depression. This nation is something we have never seen before. Our government now realizing, oh boy, we're in big trouble. We better act fast. So they will begin to enact what they will call the 100-day distiller holiday. It allowed the distilleries to produce their product for 100 days consecutively within a calendar year, and they will begin to tax the heck out of it. December 5th of 1933, it is repeal day. Prohibition is lifted. So we're looking at Distillers Holiday is 1929, repeal is 1933. Do that math. We now have 4 years of aging bourbon in those warehouses, and 90 days later, we are rolling on the shelves again. We have not missed a beat since. I am proud and honored to tell you we're the only distillery that still stands today that is still owned by that same family I've been talking about. Pre-Prohibition, during Prohibition, after Prohibition, 154 years to be exact. The Brown family has held on to raise this company very tight. And while we enjoy talking about our history, we're certainly excited about the future. Welcome to Old Forester, my friends. Come on.
Let me holler at you a minute about the Brewzle Whiskey Festival. October 12th, we're gonna have some of our favorite distilleries we featured on the channel. Old Dominic, Ben Holiday, Old Soul, and many more are going to be in Opelika, Alabama. We're gonna be pouring samples, and I'm excited to announce we'll be releasing our very own whiskey brand at this event. You'll be able to get tastings, but you'll also be able to pick up a bottle and take it with you. Tickets are on sale right now, $50 for general admission, but we also have a $25 designated driver ticket because we want you to act responsibly. If you wanna join me, if you wanna hang out, if you wanna have some pours, I know there's football games on. We're gonna have them on too. I bought 2 huge TVs. We got Red Clay's got TVs all over the inside. We're gonna be hanging out. We're gonna be having a party. We're gonna be watching some football games. Best of all, we're gonna be drinking some fine whiskey. If you would, join me. Tickets for sale right now. Look at the link in the description, and I'll see you in Opelika.
Kind of yeasty, smells like bread, smells like beer. How about banana? A really ripe banana, a little green apple, a little pear comes through there. Before we begin to talk about this, I do want to talk about Brown-Forman, who we are as a company. Old Forester, we are the brand that started Brown-Forman. We were here in this building from 1882 up until 1919. In 1933, coming out of Prohibition, that's when they built the new campus for Brown-Forman Old Forester 9 miles west of here. It is still sitting there today. It is now its own city block. These are 4,500-gallon tanks. They're yielding for us 14 barrels per tank. At the main campus, those are 45,000-gallon tanks. Trust me, They make bourbon on a much grander level. But I'll explain it like this. We are a fully functioning distillery. Everything they're doing there, we're doing it here. They're going to make about 90% there. We're going to make about 10% here. So who exactly is Brown-Forman? Obviously, we own Old Forester, Jack Daniels, Woodford Reserve, El Jimador, Herradura, Corbel Champagne, Chambord Wine, Slane's Whiskey, Forge Gin, and that's the tip of the iceberg. The largest distributor of spirits here in the United States is the Brown-Forman Corporation. So they refer to this as sour mash. Mill down the grains, cook it with the water. Enzymes are coming out, breaking down starches, creating forced sugars. Step one. Step two. We then add in a proprietary yeast. Now, yeast is very important in the creation of alcohol. My mother was from Mississippi. We travel back home to Mississippi every summer, and the grandma sends back home with my mom this mason jar of yeast. My mother, she's gonna make some really good sourdough bread, some really good yeast rolls. This is the process. Mom would feed the yeast every 3 or 4 days. She'd make that bread. She'd always sell some of that yeast back, right? Starter yeast, we've heard of that. Feed the yeast again every 3 or 4 days, make more bread, but always sell some of the yeast back. That's the same thing we're doing here. When you take the yeast and you begin to carry through from batch to batch, what you are doing is you will carry your flavor profile all the way through for you from batch to batch. As we go up, you're gonna see our doubler first. As we go a little higher, you're gonna see our steel. Our steel is 44 feet tall, 24 inches in diameter. Comes to us by way of Vietnam Copper and Brass right here in Louisville, just a few blocks down.
What proof are you distilling to?
We are going to 140. We will go when the barrel entry is going to be right at that 125, as close as we get it. Take a closer look at the steel, see just how tall the steel is. We did not put it together here. They actually closed down Main Street out in front, and they brought it out on a big flatbed 18-wheeler. By crane, they lifted this steel up into this building, and then they finished the building off around it. We have affectionately named her Big Penny because she is popping like a big copper penny. So Big Penny, she has 19 shelves that fit within her. Each shelf has a plate that fits in it that has holes in it. It's working like a sieve, like a colander, if you will. There's one of those plates back there on top of the barrel. We actually own our own cooperage. Cooperage is where they're making barrels. We like to have our hands in every bit of the process of making our products, and we know the barrel plays a #1 role in making some really good bourbon. That is where they raise the barrel. It takes 29 to 31 of those staves to raise the barrel. They bring it here and they flip it upside down. It's like more like a lampshade. They take that steel rope and tie it off around the bottom and spray the outside of the staves with water and allow the water to saturate inside the staves. This machine is called a windlass. The windlass is dropping down in there and it's going to provide indirect heat. So with the indirect heat and the water that saturates your staves, after about 15 to 20 minutes, these staves are swelling up. They're going to be more pliable, which means when they begin to pull and tug at that steel rope, staves will bend, the barrel's going to form. Once we have the barrel formed, they're bringing it back to this machine here. It's called the toaster. We toast the inside of our barrels before we char. When you toast, it's bringing all the sugar that's in that wood to the surface for you.
Are your barrels here at Old Forester different than the other Brown-Forman companies?
The difference between us and Woodford is they'll do heavier toasting, lighter charring. We do lighter toasting, heavier charring. So yeah, that's one of the ways you can change your flavor profiles. Obviously, Jack Daniels is a different beast all in together, what they're doing there as well. But you want to change your flavor profile, you change your setting on your charring and your toasting, and you'll change it.
So the physical barrels, the oak and stuff like that is pretty much the same, but y'all treat them different?
It is. We do not own the forest, but we own the mill. Push that back one time. This is a good place for a camera, by the way. Perfect. More than 50% of the flavor of bourbon comes out of the barrel. So when we talk about the importance of the barrel, it is key one to nothing else to make us some really good bourbon. This machine here is called the crozier. The machine cuts this tongue and groove. It's going to catch the barrel head, lock it into position. This machine is called the hooper. Purpose of the hooper is to apply 4,500 pounds of pressure to slide each of these permanent irons into position. We will not nail them, we will not bolt them. That will take away from the flavor of bourbon. So this is what they call an urban warehouse. You will not see this anywhere else along the bourbon trail. It is very unique to itself. I like to say this is where the magic happens and the romance is going on right now with the barrels. If you were to go out to the countryside of Kentucky, you'll see horse farms, distilleries, and these really tall buildings, we call them rick houses. They are massive. They're anywhere from 7 to 9 stories tall. They're housing anywhere from 30 to 50,000 barrels in one house, and they will be out there for Mother Nature, meaning they will not be heated in the winter, they will not be cooled in the summer. So what happens? In the heat of the summer, the barrel's swelling up in the heat, and that bourbon's gonna flow through those staves very freely. That's what we want it to do. It's gonna go in deep and grab the sugar of the grain, the spicy oak, the color of the char. At about 40 degrees and below, the barrel contracts and it brings all that bourbon out with it. Here in this room, we are different. We are temperature controlled year round. What it is feeling like today, continue to feel this way throughout the rest of the year. So what does that mean for us? We still waiting on that one a little longer. I got answers, I don't have that answer just yet. To understand this space, let's talk about how traditional rick houses work. Let's say you are visiting Buffalo Trace. It is a hot Kentucky day. You will walk into the bottom level of the 7-story brick house. It will be 90 degrees. At the top of that circuit, it's going to be 120 plus easily. So the barrels at the top of the brick houses, they are in heat for longer periods of time. More intensive heat, which means the barrel is swelling up under more pressure of the heat, and that bourbon is flowing faster and deeper through the staves. Your more spicier notes of bourbon will come from barrels at the top of these rick houses. So in this space, because we will never have that major heat that I just described, we think things are slowing down a bit. We're not aging as fast here, but at the same time, we're hoping things are going to be more consistent. Because remember, 40 degrees and below, right? The barrel contracts. Contraction of the barrel means bourbon comes out of the wood. The angel share stops and the bourbon lays dormant in that barrel throughout the winter months. Not ours. Ours is continually flowing all year round. Typically at age 1. Once a barrel has been in a warehouse for a full year, that's when they begin to drill holes, taste the babies, see what the babies are going to grow up to be. Okay, we know Old Forester. We know the profile we're looking for. We've only talked about one recipe, but you got a lot of different offerings on the table today. If it's all the same recipe, what's making them different? Age, proof, location. Remember those 3 things. We will talk more about those once we get into tasting. We moved out of this building in 1919. We did not come back home until 2018. 100 years later, we have returned back home to Whiskey Row. Nothing has been bottled or sold from here yet. We're close. We have celebrated the 6-year anniversary for the first barrels that rolled in here in 2018. They are tasting like Old Forester, so that is good news. We are moving left to right on your staves. The bottles are going to roll here in front of me, moving left to right. These 4 are what we call the Whiskey Rose series. We are starting with the 1870 original batch. It is the one on your left. Let's pick it up and hold it up to the light. Take a look at that beautiful, rich, deep amber color. What did I say gave the color to bourbon? Char. 100% is coming from the char. And we're going to give her like swirly swirl sticking out our pinky. You know what this does? Not a damn thing. And now the proper way to nose your bourbon. Your nose and your mouth, they're closely related. Take the tip of your nose, hold it top center of this glass, hold a little bit of your mouth open. Y'all, this one's gonna come in hot, hot, hot. We have this thing around here called a Kentucky hug. Now the Kentucky hug will hit you in the center of your chest, or it's gonna hit you at the bottom of your feet. Either way today, I want you to embrace the Kentucky cousin you did not know you had. These next 3, when we get there, finish them if you would like, but this one, just save a sip at the back. You guys gonna do some magic at the end. Cheers, my friends. Take that first sip. It is coming in like rubbing alcohol. Woo, you got some heat. Look, we're not pulling a whole lot of flavor out of this one just yet. Okay, this one is getting us ready for what is to come. While you're working on it, let's talk about 1870. It is 90 proof. It is a totally soft, approachable, delicate bourbon. We believe this is as original to what George was batching back in 1870. So when George was in the building, he never owned his own still. George was that rectifier. Remember the story I told you? But he was on the good side of the business. So there were 3 separate distilleries George batched from. One had a wood rick house, the other one had a stone rick house, the other one had a metal rick house. We have all 3 of those type of rick houses now at the main campus. So we batch for this 1870. We got one of the 3 distinctive rick houses, pulling 7 barrels from each one, batching 21 barrels together. These are what we call small batches. The definition of a small batch will differ from distillery to distillery, but here at Old Forester, we consider our small batches to be 100 barrels or less. This is a small, so we have at 21. So what exactly is a small batch? Well, you have to understand where we've been and why y'all sitting here today, and let's connect the dots. Back in the day, common practice was if you owned a rick house and you were aging 50,000 barrels in it, you would walk in, you'd say, you know what? In this corner, give me 1,000 of those barrels. Down the other corner, give me another 2,000, and let's just throw them all together. You know what that was considered? Consistency. But in the 60s, bourbon begins to take a big tank. I like to say the James Bond effect took home. Somebody tell me what those movies are about. Shaken, not stirred, right? Martinis and cocktails. The brown water did not go in the cocktail in the 60s like it does today. So because America is embracing this cocktail revolution, here's what happened. Through the back door began to rush in the clear spirits. Gin, vodka, because that's what everybody's drinking. Bourbon is now kicked so hard it begins to go internationally. Because there's places out there that will spend $300 on a bottle we wouldn't give $30 for here. I hate to say it, but you know, most of the distilleries are not USA owned anymore. And that's okay, Because those that own all these other distilleries have done a tremendous job in preserving history and heritage, tradition. They have brought money, they have brought tourism. But I say that to say this. There's only one USA-owned distillery that is still standing through it all. You're sitting in it. When I talk about the Brown family, they still reside here in Louisville, Kentucky. My boss, he is a great-great-grandson of George. He's a fifth-generation Brown to set as president of this company. Do you know how cool it is to work for a major global brand such as Brown-Forman? Y'all, they are top 10 in the world. That the same family for 154 years is owned and maintained, and they treat me like I'm their family. I wish I was a Brown. Good bourbon in the 60s was still being made. We didn't break the wheel. We just weren't drinking it here. But in the 90s, here's what's going to all come back around. Remember I told you we drill holes? We taste. We know exactly where your honey spots are. Used to, the honey spots would just get thrown over the thousands and lost. In the 90s, that's when they began to target those honey spots. And instead of going in and taking thousands of barrels, we are now cherry picking. These have been cherry picked for you. 100 barrels or less, 50 barrels or less. Warehouse G is spicy, Warehouse C is smooth and sweet. Blend these barrels together, create many different flavor expressions, and the small batches, you know, it begins to emerge. Single barrel begins to emerge, and bourbon has never looked back. We're going to go up to 100 proof. Do not let that scare you. The second one on your stove today is the 1897 Bottle and Bond. People say root beer float. I like to say Christmas in a bottle because it's going to be eggnog. It's got spices in it, but we're not talking kitchen. We're not talking pepper, excuse me. We're talking kitchen. Nutmeg, cloves, cinnamon. Grandma is cooking in the kitchen on Christmas morning. Cheers, y'all. This one's coming in spicy hot, but you're smoothing it a lot quicker. Into that nutmeg, allspice, where there's candy right in the center. At the very back, your finish is like a dark chocolate. Well, back in the day, you would barter. Bourbon was being tainted, right? They were adding things into the barrel to give it color, to make it look like it had aged. You couldn't trust bourbon. So if you bartered your bourbon, they made you bring in the barrel. Couldn't bring in a bottle, had to bring it in the barrel. They would dump something on the ground, they would light a match and set it on fire. They'd watch the flame go up, and they were looking for blue. When they saw blue flame, they knew there was enough alcohol in the barrel to be good. And guess what, family? They termed it, show me the proof. Drink responsibly, of course, but we always want higher proof bourbon. This is how it works. 160's coming off the still. We gotta get in the barrel no higher than 125, so we will cut into it by adding water to bring proof down. 125 is gonna go age and rest. During the aging process, the natural evaporation will occur. We call it angel share. Just know that more heat means more angel share, and angel share is a fancy word for loss. Inside the barrel during aging, water molecules are smaller than alcohol molecules, so it's actually water that's escaping the pores of the barrel. That's your angel share. Higher proof. Proof's going up. You got it. Less water, higher proof. Let's say you've aged a barrel 6 years. You tap into it, it's now 133.4. But we got to get to 90. So what we'll do is we're adding that water in. You know now while we talk the heck out of the water and the limestone in this state, it is important. Higher proof means more oil is left behind for you. Higher proof means this: boldness, complexity, flavor, viscosity. If you've not been one to venture out for higher proof bourbon, I encourage you, get out of the boat, walk on water a little bit. Step your way in. The third one on the table today is the 1910 Old Fine Whiskey. Who is familiar with 1910? It's a double barrel. Look how dark it is. Double barrel means it's in the first barrel for 4 years with a good medium char. After 4 years, we take it out of that barrel, and we're going to put in another brand new charred up barrels, and those barrels will have been charred almost 10 seconds of incineration. It'll be triple of what you saw upstairs. Char will fall out of it. The bourbon finishes in the second set of barrels for 9 months. This one's coming in almost like Scotch. You've got a saltiness, but you begin to smooth very, very quickly, a very savory, smoky oak. Butter creaminess in the center. Banana, Foster creamy right in the center. Remember, we smelt bananas downstairs. Bring bananas upstairs now and toast them. At the very back, your finish is like a hazelnut. When I have the younger generation, I say Nutella because they do not know what hazelnut is. You get Nutella? The complexity in the center that you're receiving, that butter creaminess, that's the magic of the second. That's not the candy, okay? That's the magic of the second barrel with that heavy char. This last one is the 1920 Prohibition style. This is the most beautiful, bold, complex bourbon you're ever gonna have. This one's coming in graham cracker, ripe apple. You're now in the pine forest with the pine trees around you, dark chocolate, and a quick hit of black pepper right now. Right there it is. Whoop, the India gum line right there. Kentucky Hug Builds. Blow out your heat. 115 proof, just went down nice and smooth. I say the proof for the end because I did not want to scare you off on this one.
You know more or less the ages, like the average, or is it just like
Say
what's
that one
the
more
sweet
time.
spot, like the same?
The sweet spot for aging,
You just say like a 7.
Probably between that 7 and 8 year. One of the things, so these are 4 to 6 year old blends, but one of the things that set Old Forester apart in this industry is we do heat cycling at our traditional rick houses. So we're not talking about this rick house here, but traditional rick houses, they are not heated, they are not cooled. They're housing 50,000 barrels in them, but at 60 degrees, probes kick on. Steam heat comes out, steam heat rises to the top, and it keeps the bourbon flowing. So when I say these are 4 to 6 year old blends, a 4 to 6 year old heat cycle gives you a 6 to 8 year flavor profile. If you're following what I'm saying, remember I said at 40 degrees and below, the barrel contracts, bourbon comes out of the wood, and your angel share stops, and loss stops at 40 degrees and below. Typical angel share loss is about 20% at most distilleries. Old Forester, we are losing 50%. We gotta go back to this first one last time. Y'all remember 1870? No, you don't, because it wasn't that good. Let's get our nose on it now. Maple syrup. Pancakes. I will Captain Crunch. Somebody the other day said they got chicken and waffles. Y'all getting chicken and waffles? Cheers, y'all. Finish this one off. And just like that, the really harsh bourbon is so soft. It's so smooth. It's got so much flavor. Y'all the cool kids at the bar. I got you in George's office. Do you remember the picture? Here's the windows. As you're walking out the front door today, look across the street to Merle's Whiskey Kitchen. Hanging on the side of Merle's, you will see George Garvin Brown. George looks back at the building. He is saying, welcome home, Old Forester. It's good to see you back in town. We moved out in 1919. 100 years later, we have come back home to Whiskey Row. This is the end of our tour. If you enjoyed your tour today, my name is Leanne. If you did not enjoy your tour today, my name is Loretta. Okay, come on, stand on up.
Had a great time here at Old Forester, learning a little bit more about what makes Old Forester different. We are paying attention to the details, the specifics, the proof that they distill at, the proof that they enter the barrel, how long do they age their barrels, like little subtle differences in barrels and things like that make a big difference on what your whiskey actually ends up being. A rick house, where it's at in the rick house, like there's so many different things, and I think that's really, again, the thought for today is just how big of an impact all of these subtle things have on the whiskey and how hard it is for a small producer to just have a broad enough experience of making whiskey to really understand how to get all the little details right. And if you get one wrong, you may set yourself back decades before you can correct that. So be sure to support all those small craft brands, even if they're not getting all the details right, so that they'll survive long enough to figure it out. Appreciate y'all watching. See you in the next one.